not quiet.
Yep. Okay. Stream is a go.
All right.
I mean, it doesn't really matter right now because we're not going to be playing the game yet, but I'll just share that to you. But
Yay.
yeah, like I said, for those who are here, I'm going to be going for like the first 2 minutes because I'm finishing making a cup of tea. Pertusit will talk to you.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Now, I know we had our last real stream with me on Tuesday, so this is like a little bonus segment where it's just me and you for a little bit. This is cheating, really, if you think about it. But that's fine. Oh, I was just telling Monsieur Levi that I've been working on some D&D stuff that I'm excited about. Levi isn't quiet. Levi isn't here. Wait for him to come back and then double check and make sure. But that would be poetic irony, though, if he is quiet, considering last week Discord screwed up our audio. That's an update I can give everybody. We found out... Oh, before... Okay, we'll have him fix it when he gets back. We found out the reason I was very quiet last week and we couldn't quite figure out why, it straight up was just Discord. It's crazy to me. I don't know how. I don't know how all they have to do is give us places to do group calls, and they managed to make it to where they selectively made people's microphones quieter. It was nothing with my hardware. It was completely related to the software. Like, outside of Discord, my audio was fine. Supposedly, it's fine once more. I don't even know how you screw up that badly. And for what? For a funny picture of Wumpus? Why? Why do we need Wumpus NFTs when all you have to do is make sure audio works? It's kind of stupid, and they should probably, like, lose at least half their employees for this blunder. I'm only slightly exaggerating. Probably, like, 1/3 of the employees would be fine. Mostly the upper echelon people, like the CEO and such. But that's my rant for the day. If you watch the podcast, you should know this is no different from how I normally act about, like, any corporation that makes bad decisions and moves. I just kind of want them all to, like, be gone, and like, can we have, like, oh, he's coming back.
Yeah, but I'm here.
Okay, he stopped me before I'm saying something I will regret.
I'm back. Headphones are on.
But all that news aside, welcome back to Umineko. I don't think we're gonna finish episode 1 today. Ain't no way. We'd have to speed read for that.
Or we could just do an 8-hour stream.
It would probably... It'd take somewhere around there, I bet. Oh, I should mention to you, since you are back, Schroggers in the chat is saying that you are quiet on the stream.
I'll get him.
He's just a viewer. We don't want to scare him.
I'll find where he lives. How's
also,
that?
I found out... we'll have to wait until... he's currently saying still quiet, but I don't know if that's caught up to what you just said or not.
He said that seconds after I...
It was like
Yeah, seconds
like
after I
moments.
moved the slider to make myself louder, so I doubt that was caught up. Better.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, there we go.
Better? Okay. But yeah, like I said, I don't think we're going to finish that. However, I think we are going to finish the first day. So there's that. All 5 of our previous streams so far have been on day 1
Yeah.
of the story. And I feel confident we'll finish the first day shortly. I thought we would last time, honestly, but it just kind of kept going.
It did just kind of keep going. Oh,
right.
okay. Let me pull up the stream on my phone so I can get chat, because I don't have a second monitor because I'm a loser. All right.
Give it just a moment.
All right. There's that. All right.
Yeah.
Shannon entered the entrance hall to the mansion with a tottering gait.
Tottering.
A mixture of exultation and uncertainty gave her a feeling that she couldn't easily describe. It swelled up in her chest until it felt like she was about to burst. After stopping for a second in front of the servant room to take a deep breath and calm her heart, she opened the door. Inside, Goda, who had been ordered to take the midnight shift at the mansion tonight, was absorbed in a worn-out crossword puzzle magazine.
He would.
He looked up for an instant to see if one of the family had come, but when he realized it was a fellow servant, he returned to his puzzle as if nothing had happened.
Genji-sama told me to come and help you.
Ah, is that so? That's a relief. I was just about to go check that the mansion was fully locked up, but I felt uneasy about leaving this room unmanned. After all, Kraus-sama and the others' meeting looked as though it would continue for quite some time. They might request some tea at any moment.
Dang, what will we do? That's true. Then what shall we do? Should I watch over...
In that case, forgive me, Shannon-san, but I'll ask that you patrol the mansion. I will stay here, awaiting the family's orders.
See? He sucks. Yes.
I don't think this is a C moment. I think everyone has thought he sucks before
Yeah.
this. It's very evident that he sucks, I think.
He do be sucking.
Shannon was slightly disgusted. Even though she'd come here to help out as a favor, she was casually being forced to do the job of the person actually on duty.
He'll regret this.
Furthermore, after one-sidedly forcing that task on her, Goto returned to his magazine once again and became immersed in his crossword puzzle.
But on the bright side, you know what the name of this song is we're listening to?
What's the name of the song that we're listening to?
Hope.
Oh,
Isn't that nice?
yeah.
And after what just happened too in the context, oh.
Yeah. Shannon bowed her head as a token sign of respect for her elder, then she left the room to patrol the mansion. Japan moment.
I had someone call me senpai today, and I don't know how I feel about it still.
Why?
Yeah.
Were they like...
No, that's all I want to leave it. No more context. I don't
Okay.
want any more context.
Okay.
I'm just gonna leave it there.
Okay.
It did happen, but I'm
Like
just
they
gonna
were
leave it there.
genuine about it?
I'm just gonna leave it there.
Okay. Okay.
I'll tell you more afterwards.
All
but
right. Alright. Thanks to her being a bit ticked off, she managed to suppress that floaty feeling she'd been having until just now. And anyway, she couldn't let Genji or Kanon see her looking like this. She wanted a little more time to herself until her heart calmed down, so maybe going on patrol wouldn't be so bad. She began to hear the tumultuous voices of the family discussion coming from the dining hall.
Dang.
Someone was speaking at great length, only to be interrupted by someone else. This second person also began to speak in a very long, drawn-out fashion, until yet another person interrupted.
What?
That kept on repeating. Monday left me broken.
Yep.
It was as though
Kept
their
repeating.
displeasure was their displeasure was seeping out through their voices. That's generally how you show your displeasure with things.
True.
She had been told to go to the guest house, so it would be bad if Kraus discovered her. Thinking this, Shannon dashed past the dining hall. I will do the loudest thing possible. Run.
Yeah.
Then she went along a prearranged route through the dark mansion, checking to see that all the locks were secure. She walked down the hall, checking each window. There were no humans on Rokkenjima other than those connected to the family, so locking up didn't really serve much of a purpose. That's an odd way to phrase that. There were no humans on
Isn't it?
Rokkenjima.
I wonder why they did that.
No one had been in the habit of locking up at the Ushiromiya head family. At least not until Natsuhi had scolded them for being careless.
That do be kind of crazy, though.
They do
Anyway.
live on an island, but...
Sorry, I was focusing on the humans thing still.
Oh.
I was
Well,
still
you
kind of
can-
on that.
You can never be too careful even if you do live on an island, though, but still.
That is true.
The metal fixtures on the windows were ice cold. As she checked them one by one, the glow in her heart seemed to cool down.
Question mark? Oh.
Bunny! Banoi.
Look, a birdie.
It's pretty! Let's catch it!
Let's catch it.
At that time, she thought she saw something twinkling across the hall.
Ooh.
Twinkling? How could
When are we gonna hear our first, well, you know the soundbite I'm talking
Yeah.
about. I can't wait for it.
Twinkling? How could anything be twinkling through the darkness of the hall? She figured she must have been imagining it, but she still held her breath. Grasping a curtain, she fearfully gazed down the hall. However, other than the occasional crack of thunder brightening the hallway, she was unable to glimpse any flicker again. It must have been her imagination after all. Maybe her heart was so agitated that she'd seen something that didn't even exist. Shannon went back to checking the windows. However, a certain unnerving memory was resurrected in the back of her mind. It was that ghost story, which had been passed down amongst the servants who served the Ushiromiya head family. The mansion had two different masters, one of the day and one of the night. Beatrice, the master of the night, would sometimes fly around the mansion in the form of sparkling butterflies. That was the story. Come to think of it, didn't Kenon-kun once say he'd seen it with his own eyes? Though he got sulky when I said he must have imagined it and refused to believe him. Could it possibly be true? The roar of the thunder gave no answer.
Yeah.
This is why I got tea today.
The rain do be pouring. Look at that, man. It's it's like static.
It is a it is a hurricane. Typhoon.
I also, while this is going on, I just learned that 7th expansion has a whole nother series. Like, not, like, other than When They Cry.
Yeah.
So that's homework for me, I suppose. Rutro, says Schroggers. That's how I feel right now.
The Scooby-Doo gang trying to solve the mystery of Rokkenjima.
Holy moly, they would... Have you seen that old promo material from the, like, 90s, early 2000s? I have that painting, and this is freaking me out. The way she looks, bro. Or in that picture, the way she's looking at me terrifies me in that picture. But...
She likes you.
I guess, the promo material of Scooby-Doo and the gang doing the Blair Witch.
Yeah, I've seen, yeah.
That's what that makes me feel like.
We're just getting several
uncomfortable.
Cutting shots of the argument.
Shouting. Shannon.
Goda.
Without this music, it feels like this is like a Modern Family, or more like that 70s show kind of.
Everywhere you look. Yeah. There's a heart, there's a place, there's someone who needs you.
Crazy. I wonder what this song is, though.
Whatever happened to predictability?
You're not gonna speak, are you? Oh, thank goodness.
It would be really funny if Kenzo was the only person out of all of that who said something.
So creepy. Why are we like closing on a shot of her painting? It's freaking me out, bro.
It's just a painting, Pertusa. There's nothing.
Something about it's getting me.
Do you think the witch is real? Do you think the witch is like real or something? Are you scared of a little
Honestly,
painting?
I do, but the painting scares me more. It's the way it's looking at me, man.
So it begins.
So we did finish the first day.
We did finish the first day very quickly. We were actually right there.
It's now 6 a.m. the next day.
Bing, bong, bing, bong.
Now I need like slow reverb. Everywhere you look.
The second day, October 5th, 1986.
Ryushio 7 does have quite a way of like putting the emphasis on the dates. He did that in Higurashi too, though I sadly can't remember the date. It's like August 17th. No, August 21st is the day of the Higurashi problems.
Genji tightened his bow tie and looked outside through a crack in the curtains. Maybe the rain had died down a tiny bit since the previous night. But the thick rain clouds didn't seem like they'd be letting any trace of the morning sun get by. The morning was dim and far from refreshing. It seems it will last all day after all.
Sorry for keeping you waiting, Genji-sama.
Kanon finished checking his appearance and exited the washroom. On their normal schedule, it was rare for anyone to have to suffer going straight from a midnight shift to an early morning shift.
Ooh, that would suck.
They were on a special schedule for the 2 days of the family conference. However, unless the typhoon passed today, the relatives' stay on this island would last until tomorrow. Kanon thought it would be best to prepare for the special schedule to last an extra day. The two of them left the guest house, opening their umbrellas. The rose garden had been devastated by the wind and rain on the previous night. Even though they'd spent several days making it beautiful to welcome the guests, one stormy night was enough to ruin it.
You know, if I lived in a place like this and had that much money, I would invest in like
A greenhouse?
greenhouse style walkways, like glass covered walkways, so that way you can go from place to place without this problem. But oh well, and probably a rock would destroy it anyway.
Kanon sighed. The Witch of Rokkenjima does not like the glass walkway.
Oh, you could do some freaky moments with that though, where it's like opaque glass and you can't see through it and you see the silhouette. Holy moly!
We should write Umineko 2.
I was gonna say we should write the Umineko live action adaptation, but unfortunately that play already exists. Musical, excuse me.
Japan does like doing that.
They're crazy. They've done that with several anime and anime
Persona
stuff.
is the other one that I know is like a big
Death
thing.
Note. Death Note.
They've
the
done
musical.
it with Death Note.
Yes, sir.
That's so funny.
It's something. Live action prison school.
That does exist. I hope it's not
That
a
does
musical.
exist. I almost hope it is.
The two
Anyway.
headed for the mansion. They were supposed to meet up with Goda and prepare breakfast. Goda was such a perfectionist that he had probably already woken up and was probably already preparing a breakfast as exquisite and elegant as glasswork, speaking of glass.
Yep.
They reached the overhang by the entrance to the mansion and folded up their umbrellas. Genji took a bundle of several keys from his pocket and unlocked the front door. The Uroshiromiya family mansion was the only thing on Rokkenjima, so in the past, they hadn't been in the habit of locking up.
They're emphasizing this, like, a lot.
However, Natsuhi had ordered that the mansion be locked up from midnight to early morning. Ever since then, unlocking the door in the early morning had become part of the servants' morning shift. This task had been given to Genji and Kanon, so that Goda could start preparing breakfast as soon as he woke up. Silence had fallen in the mansion, giving the impression that the mansion itself was still asleep. Well then, let us begin the morning chores.
Yes, sir.
The two of them split up and began opening the curtains throughout the mansion. If the curtains stayed closed, the mansion would remain enveloped in faint darkness as though it was still trapped in the previous night.
What a way to put it.
Following a well-rehearsed procedure, Kanon went around the mansion, opening the curtains for one window after the other without having to retrace his steps once. Even with this horrible weather, drawing the curtains made it feel just a little bit like morning. While doing that, he passed in front of the kitchen. Even though he hadn't smelled anything yet, his stomach started aching for some of Goda's prized cooking.
Well, at least they let him eat that instead of, like, dog food. Good morning. Thoughts, question mark.
If they did eat dog food, though, Kanon would just be like, we're furniture, it's okay.
True. It's furniture food. They have to change the label to say furniture food.
He tried to greet Goda, who should have been getting breakfast ready, but Goda was nowhere to be seen. The kitchen was darkly lit, and not only were the curtains not open, but the fan wasn't even running. It was still cold, without any trace of a fire being lit, so of course there were no signs of breakfast being made either. Though it would have been inexcusable, perhaps Goda had overslept. Even servants are only human. They sometimes sleep in and show up late.
Dang.
In the rare case that such a thing happens, it's part of a servant's code to hide the unsightly scene before anyone notices, smoothly cover it up, and make sure the family never even realizes that anything has gone wrong. Cannon took the receiver of the phone that had been fitted to the wall and dialed the number for the extension line in the servants' sleeping room.
Dots question mark again.
He couldn't hear that characteristic sound of a dial tone. Cannon tried picking up the receiver again, but even so, he couldn't hear the usual dial tone. He tried dialing again, but it had no apparent effect. Could the lightning last night have damaged some machine, breaking the extension line? The equipment in this mansion was all worn out. Cannon fully understood that even the smallest thing could have caused it to break down. He gave up trying to wake Koro with the telephone and dashed over to the servants' sleeping room. Shannon and Cannon with their dashing.
They do be dashing. What was it we first opened with? She was tottering something?
Yeah, tottering gait.
Yeah, tottering gait.
How long has it been since I stopped sleeping and started lazily staring up at the ceiling? Who is this? Who am I speaking as? Is this Battler? Oh no, it's Natsuhi, okay. That vague sense of awakening was part of Natsuhi's usual morning experience. She always slept lightly, and she couldn't sleep at all without medicine. To Natsuhi, sleep was definitely not a happy thing. When she looked outside, she saw that it was still pouring. If she hadn't sensed a tiny amount of light, she might have mistakenly thought that it was still the previous night. She herself was one of the hosts, so she mustn't wake up later than her guests. Urging herself on, she raised up her body, which still hadn't completely recovered from yesterday's weariness. The single bed.
Yeah.
No one would torment her as long as she remained inside this room. And her headache wouldn't get any worse here. Understandable, completely understandable.
Mm-hmm.
This room was the only place she could find peace. So when she left, it meant returning to the world where her husband's siblings kept trying to stab each other in the back. In that case, wouldn't it be better to just stay locked up in this room forever?
True.
That ridiculous notion brought a bitter smile to Natsuhi's face. She was starting to sound like Kenzo.
She was starting to be based.
Though she often complained about Kenzo staying locked up in his own room and refusing to attend to everyone else, the truth was that she longed to do the same.
Yup.
Natsuhi gave her head a small shake, and her fantasy was replaced by the reawakening of her usual headache. When she reached for the doorknob, trying to leave the room, her hand touched the scorpion charm she had hung from it before going to sleep the previous night. It was Maria's charm, which Natsuhi had received from Jessica. Didn't Jessica say something about it having the power to repel magic, telling her to hang it from her doorknob? Maybe it was thanks to the charm that at least this room had been protected from the malice of her husband's siblings. As she thought this, her mood began to get a little more cheerful. I wonder if I have Jessica to thank for the little bit of peaceful sleep I managed to receive. Then Natsuhi remembered. That's right. Last night I promised Jessica I'd give her a charm of my own in exchange for this one, didn't I? Natsuhi opened a drawer on her dresser and took out an antique accessory case that she had treasured when she was a child. Inside, there were many small objects that Natsuhi had thought were valuable at the time. From amidst those, she pulled out a red pouch. Inside was a small round mirror, about 10 centimeters across. It looked quite old, but the design on the back of the mirror was very ornate, and it felt like something with historical value. At the very least, it seemed much more authentic than the other charm, which looked like a plastic scorpion keychain. She had heard that this was a spiritual mirror for warding off evil spirits, and she had been given it specifically by her grandmother when her grandfather's mementos had been distributed. I want to know, surely Natsuhi comes from another wealthy family, because the Ushiromias probably wouldn't have just married some random woman into the family.
Probably.
It makes me wonder, how much easier would her life have been if she didn't marry into the Ushiromias?
Hard to say. like, at this time, and if she was part of a wealthy family, she probably still would have been seen as, like, a bargaining chip.
True.
So it could have been worse, but I imagine that's kind of hard to
It's
do.
hard to be worse than the Ushiromiyas, I think.
Yeah, I think she was doomed to a fate similar or worse than this, unless she like ran away from her family entirely and
She
worked as
could
like
have
a
been
waitress.
lucky though, and it could have been like one of those extremely rare times in history where like an arranged marriage actually ended up with love. If she didn't marry Kraus, because Kraus is a piece of shit, and I hate him.
That only happens in Hallmark movies.
Well, maybe she would have been the main star of a Hallmark movie, Pertusit.
I doubt it. She's Japanese. That's right. I'm calling you out, Hallmark. Anyway.
It had been believed since long ago that a strange power resided in this mirror. Perhaps people thought it could reflect calamity and malice in the same way it reflected light.
What?
My dog is losing it right now. I bet my mom just got home.
My dogs are barking. That's because I just got back.
That's because I just took my socks off. Natsuki returned the mirror to its pouch. It would probably be a fitting object to hand over to Jessica.
Oh god, that gave me a heart attack. Oh my gosh. The stop of all music and no text box. First I thought it was like Frozen. And then the knocking. Holy moly. Huh.
Oh. Just as she was placing it in her pocket, the sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly echoed throughout the room. Yes? Good morning, madam. It is Genji. My apologies for waking you so early. I'm coming now. What is it? No servant had ever come to her this early in the morning, nor had they come to wake her in person. Perhaps something bad had happened. Maybe some fatal oversight had been made while preparing breakfast, something that would shame the household in front of their guests.
Poor choice of words, Natsuki.
Natsuki took a deep breath in anticipation for whatever trouble she was about to hear of. When she opened the door, Genji once again gave a morning greeting while bowing deeply. Natsuki tentatively responded. Good morning. Did something happen? My apologies. It would seem that the telephones have broken down due to the lightning last night. The extension telephone isn't working, so please forgive my coming to see you directly. The extension telephone isn't working? That will be troublesome. Will it be possible to fix it? I'm afraid we don't know the location of the damage. Later on, I would like to call in an expert and have him repair it. Does that mean we'll be unable to have it repaired until after the typhoon passes? Then it will remain broken down for the duration of our guest's stay. Will that hamper our efforts to care for our guests? We will do all we can to ensure there are no problems.
Correct answer.
Very well. I'm counting on you to make sure that we have no blunders. Natsuki let out a small sigh of relief. She had been prepared for the worst, but damage to the telephones wasn't the kind of trouble she was worried about. Then again, even this would probably be enough to spark sarcasm from Eva. Natsuki gave her head a slight shake. Are the preparations for breakfast proceeding well? As to that, we haven't been able to find Goda. The arrangements for breakfast have yet to be carried out. What did you say? Natsuki was indignant. To her, this was a much bigger problem than the phones not working, and despite that, this piece of information was the part that had been postponed. Why did everything go well most of the time and then come to something like this when the relatives were visiting? Natsuki put her hand to her forehead and shook her head. Well, I suppose he slept in. At any rate, just see to it that someone hurries up and prepares breakfast. I don't care who. What? Natsuhi exited into the hall and turned around for a second to close the door to her room. The creepy thing she saw there silenced her completely.
Sorry.
It's me and you again.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We were coming to ask about breakfast. It was an unpleasant sight.
Sorry.
As though someone had dipped their fingers in a reddish black liquid and scratched at the door around the doorknob. It was probably some sort of awful prank, arranged by some person who wanted to make it look as though they tried to force the door with bloody hands.
For real though, like, you wake up one day and see that. What you thinking?
That someone tried to if I'm being naive and trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, I'm Nazi-pilled and I'm going to be like, oh, it's a prank. If I'm Levi, I'm probably going to be like, who's trying to kill me?
Yeah, where I'm at, like, I'm probably breaking my lease.
Yeah, no, like...
That's...
What sort of prank is this? How awful.
Hidoi. Yeah.
I also just noticed it as I came to call you. I will clean it later. Perhaps this is a vulgar joke by one of the guests. Disgusting. Truly disgusting. Kimoi. Who in the world would pull such a childish and disgusting prank? Natsu had a pretty good idea, but of course there was no proof. So even if she pushed the issue, it would just seem as though she was making a fuss about nothing. In fact, it would surely be better to act as though she hadn't even realized that such a prank had been played on her. Natsuhi gave the order to have it cleaned and headed off to the parlor with a squeak of her heels.
She got those things lubed up.
Yeah.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Here we go again.
It's like you got sweet and sour.
Yeah. When Natsuhi and Genji arrived in the parlor, Eva and Hideyoshi were already there. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Natsuhi-san. I heard Goda-san will be making us breakfast, too. My stomach's getting all excited since I woke up.
Yep. After all, it seems food is all you can look forward to at the head family household.
Good morning to you too, Eva. It's been a minute since we've had an Eva scene.
She's so quirky.
I'm pleased to see that you too are in high spirits so early in the morning, Eva-san. With a weary expression, Natsuhi returned Eva's gaze, which was fiercely competitive despite the early hour. Then Kanon jogged in. After bowing an apology to the relatives for running inside the mansion, he noticed Genji and told him something in a small voice. Kanon, have you still not found Goda?
My apologies, madam. I went all over inside of the mansion and the guest house, but I still haven't found him.
Where in the world has he gone? At
It's
any
like
rate,
Waldo.
breakfast is a higher priority than finding Goda right now. See to it immediately.
Yes.
Kanon glanced at Genji. It seemed he had something else to report, but was uncertain whether or not the words should come from him. Genji nodded and decided to give the report himself. Madam, it is not only Goda. Your husband is also nowhere to be found. My husband? Yes. Even before visiting you, I went to his room to tell him that breakfast wasn't being prepared, but I did not find him there. Furthermore, he is not the only one missing. Rudolf-sama, his wife, and Rosa-sama
are nowhere to be found.
Not in the guest house? Nor the mansion?
Yes. They were not in their rooms in the guest house either.
When she'd heard that Koro alone was missing, she'd assumed he had slept in or was loafing around somewhere. However, now that she'd learned that several of the relatives were also nowhere to be seen, she began to take a slightly more optimistic view.
Optimistic?
Could last night's family conference have continued all night up until the present moment? If so, they might have wanted to cool their heads after being shut in a stuffy room, going out for walks on their own through the rain. The part about cooling their heads really sounded like something Kraus would say. Goda had probably been summoned to accompany them and aid them in some way. Goda was not a man who lost track of time. He had to understand that preparations for breakfast would be hindered if he did not return. However, maybe the family conference had continued until this very moment, with an atmosphere that would make it hard for anyone to slip out. Yes, that theory would be quite convincing for Natsuhi. She remembered the illusion she'd felt that morning, as though the previous night had never ended. When she'd learned that the feeling wasn't just an illusion, she once again took a deep, weary breath. After all, that banquet of filthy vultures circling Kinzo's property was still going on. Perhaps they are still discussing the inheritance somewhere in the garden, or maybe the beach. At any rate, if we don't call Goda back, we'll never be able to begin preparations for breakfast.
So, what are you saying? Are Nissan and the rest still continuing their discussion?
She had planned to say it in a small voice, but Hideyoshi overheard Natsuhi and managed to grasp the situation.
Nissan and Rudolf sure are tough. Maybe it's just youth in Rosa's case? Just a bit after midnight, the two of us were so tired that we headed back to bed.
Old.
Hag. Although I do remember that Nissan and the rest were still having a heated discussion at that point.
Hag love!
That's me, but for Natsuhi. If that hasn't been made apparent already.
Men certainly are unpleasant when they get all fired up. That's us. We're unpleasant because we're fired up.
That's us. We're men.
My waifu from Umineko has yet to be revealed. She will come.
I also
I
have
will make the
only
joke.
seen episode 1, so it could change.
I doubt it.
Yo.
Not for you, but
Pertusit
maybe.
does know me very well, so he's probably right.
We'll see.
Natsuhi snorted, her face still blank.
Oh.
That was her snorting.
Yep.
Canon, search outside. If you find Goda, tell him to return immediately and begin preparing breakfast.
Certainly. Natsuhi-ne-san, we don't know for sure that they're outside, do we? Couldn't they also be inside Father's study?
Okay, go check, bitch.
I see. That's certainly possible. I don't know what path their conversation took, but there's certainly a chance that they moved to Father's study and let him in on the discussion.
Yeah, right.
I can't imagine that Father would willingly let them bring such a detestable topic into his study.
You really think so? Well, then there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, Genji-san and Kanon-kun, but could you search outside? It wouldn't be that strange for Nissan to suggest they go outside for a walk to cool their heads. Even in this weather. I'll go to Father's study.
Okay, she actually is.
Who knows, they might actually be there after all.
Eva-san, I couldn't ask a guest like you to exert herself so. I will go. I can also wish him a good morning while I'm at it.
Oh, then I'll leave it in your hands. Though I somehow doubt he'll return your greeting. Natsuhi-ne-san, have you always been on such good terms with Father?
I don't know whether you could call it that, but I am sure that I have gained his trust as the wife of the successor to the Ushiromiya family.
Then I'm sure he'll at least answer you, right? I'd like to at least have breakfast with Father. Do you think you could convince him to come down and join us? It seems that he thoroughly despises the rest of us, but I'm sure he'll listen to you if he trusts you that much. After speaking so boldly, if you're unable to convince Father and come down alone, then I doubt you'll ever be able to claim that you've earned his trust again.
Oh!
A giggle, giggle, giggle.
I am not confident, but I will try. Natsuhi responded, looking discouraged. However, knowing Kenzo's temperament, she had absolutely no confidence in her ability to bring him out. Eva was clearly mocking her, confident that Natsuhi wouldn't be able to get Kenzo to come down. But even so, Natsuhi would lose face if she gave up, saying it was impossible and letting Eva go instead. Eva's mean-spirited and unreasonable demand made Natsuhi clench her fists slightly. When Genji realized this, he softly spoke to her over her shoulder. Madam, please take this, if you would. And this is? Genji handed Natsuhi a sparkling gold key of ornate design. It was the key to Kenzo's study. The study had an auto-lock and couldn't be unlocked as long as Kenzo forbade entrance. However, since Genji was especially trusted by Kenzo, he was allowed to carry a key to that door. But if this key is used, won't you also receive the blame? When the master is sleeping deeply, simply knocking on the door would not suffice. And it would be more difficult to persuade the master to leave his room if you must talk through the door. Please, use this. Genji, a real one. Genji. Until now, Natsuhi had thought of Genji as a cold servant who wouldn't do anything for her, since he worked directly under Kenzo. He's just a kudere.
Every now and again, I remember what Genji's last words are in this franchise, and I'm always like, he really is just the ideal person, huh? He's just like what everyone should strive to be.
But it looked like she would have to alter her understanding of him. She wanted to communicate her gratitude, but by then, Genji had already turned his back on her and was walking down the corridor with Kanon. But as Natsuhi watched them go, the words directed at her from behind were sneering.
Well then, you must bring Father with you, okay? After all, it's his son's precious wife who's asking. I'm sure he'll listen to you. A giggle, giggle, giggle. We're guests, so we'll just relax here at our leisure.
Quit it, Eva. You're taking this too far. Sorry, Natsuhine-san, but we're counting on you to deal with Father.
Without answering, Natsuhi forcefully spun around on her heels and quickly left that place.
I don't want to say anything because, well, yeah.
After all that excitement the previous night, there was no way anyone was going to wake up early. George, Aniki, Jessica, and I were snoring loudly on the beds in the cousins' room. Dang, all three of them were snoring.
Honk shoe.
But Maria, who had gone straight to bed without joining in, was completely awake. As she rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked around, she was met with the loud snoring of the other three cousins. I don't know why, but that face is killing me with the context of the situation.
Oh, poor Maria. They're like, Battler, sure. George, maybe. Jessica, too? Poor thing.
That heavily implies that all of their parents also snore.
It's a family of sleep apnea?
Yeah.
Dang.
For a while, Maria had to think about what had happened. After that, She realized that her mother wasn't with her, and she quickly got lonely. Aww.
Aww.
Maria left the cousin's room, trying to head to the room that had been arranged for her and her mother. Paying no heed to the three who were sleeping soundly, she slammed the door shut.
Smart.
In response, Battler mumbled and rolled over in his sleep, but it wasn't enough to wake him up.
Nope.
After a while, Maria returned, once again opening the door with a lively bang. When she had left the room, her face had been sleepy, but now that she was back, she looked irritated. After that, she climbed up on Battler's bed, which happened to be the closest, and started yelling and jumping on it like it was a trampoline.
Amazing.
Ah! 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 Wake up! Ah! 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 What?
Doorway
What?
of summer?
What? Is it an enemy raid? Surround them! After making sure I was awake, Maria moved over to George Aniki's bed and started jumping on that too. In that manner, all three of us were all greeted with an extremely pleasant awakening.
Huh? Thanks for waking us up, Maria-chan. You stopped us from sleeping in after that late night. If only you could have been a bit more gentle about it.
George Nissan, you really are an adult. I respect that. It'll be 7 o'clock soon.
Dang!
Well, it's not really a bad time to wake up.
Yes, it is!
That made me actually have to yawn.
I've been yawning this entire time.
Mama's not here. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
And Rosa? She wasn't in her room? I wonder if she's already woken up and gone to the mansion.
Not here! Ooh, 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 Mama! Ooh, ooh, ooh. Maria kept groaning, ooh, ooh, and looking unhappy. She didn't exactly seem lonely because her mother wasn't around. It was more like she was irritated and thrown off balance because her mother wasn't where she'd expected. If we could just tell her where her mother was, that alone would probably calm her down. But unfortunately, we had no way of knowing where Aunt Rosa was except that she wasn't here.
Yeah?
Anyway, it's time for breakfast, so let's head over to the mansion. That's right. Maria, let's go to the mansion together, okay? I'm sure Aunt Rosa will be there, too. Mama's in the mansion? Then I'll go there. No.
Yeah, guess we should go to the mansion. Our parents have probably already gone there.
Maria regained her usual composure so completely her earlier tantrum now seemed like a lie. We got dressed, left the room, and headed for the mansion.
Oh, we're typhoon pilled again?
Yep. Rev up those umbrellas.
True. It's snowing even in the black screen? Okay, there we go.
Once more, there was a knocking sound on the study door, but there was no answer. He seemed to be sleeping still, and I could not wake him. If she went back downstairs and said something like that, Ava would probably be amused and triumphant. And even putting Ava aside, it was problematic that Kinzo had stayed shut away during this entire once-a-year conference, not even coming down to greet anyone. Even the family head, no, especially the family head, couldn't fail to make an appearance. I wonder if I can convince him myself. Natsuhi readied herself and used the key that she'd borrowed from Genji to open the door.
Oh, risky
I gently
girl.
opened the door.
True. Right. There it is. It's not a two-way door, though. Like, that opens up like it's a double door, but this one's not a double door.
Even though she was prepared for the sweet stench, which seemed to eat into one's brain as it poured out the small crack in the door, she couldn't help but grimace.
I don't know what they're talking about. Sweet stench.
Oh, absinthe.
I'm not. I've never been around absinthe. I don't know what it'd be smelling like.
Sweet.
Uh, that sounds.
Sickeningly sweet.
I don't know, man. My squirter that I have in my room is like sickeningly sweet, but I like it still. I don't know why these people be going like, ew, sweet smell.
But
I
imagine
don't
it
know.
being that constantly, all the time, 24/7 in a room.
Brother, I don't have to imagine.
And this is why you're Kenzo. Thinking that he might still be
Yeah.
sleeping, Natsuhi entered the room quietly.
I do be having my door locked right now.
TJ,
Uh-oh.
produce it. It's time for breakfast. Leave me be!
Produce it. We have our friends over. They are unsightly creatures.
Oh. When she did, Kenzo was already awake and looking down out the window. So, you're awake. Good morning.
How did you get in?
Kenzo spoke with his back still facing her. His voice was not harsh, but calm, and Natsuhi was slightly reassured. However, though he was awake, he wouldn't have ignored all that knocking if he was in a good mood. Natsuhi wasn't able to relax. My sincere apologies. I asked Genji-san, and he allowed me to borrow the key to the study.
Uh-oh. Oh. Genji did. If my friend thought it was that important, then I have no choice but to listen. So, what business do you have with me?
Well, breakfast will be ready soon, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would join us.
I will eat here. Have it brought here like always.
But father, the family conference happens only once a year. Please, at least let them see your face.
Go back downstairs. Are you asking me to join in as they discuss how to chew up my inheritance after I die? How foolish. Let them speak of such matters as much as they please without me. And if that's what you call a family conference, it's hardly worth leaving my room for it. I am busy. Do not bother me.
His last words carried the threat that any further questions would not be appreciated. Natsuhi realized that adding any further pleas would finally bring his wrath down upon her.
Yet yo.
She didn't look forward to facing Eva's sarcasm, but there was nothing more Natsuhi could do. Is that so? Understood. I am sure everyone will be sorry to hear it, but I will tell them. Natsuhi decided to give up. Bowing silently, she tried to leave the room before Kinzo's spasmodic temper could flare up.
Dang.
All the vocab words this round. Tottering gait. Spasmodic.
Yeah.
As she did, Kinzo spoke to her. His voice, was so calm and gentle, it felt like it came from an entirely different person.
Natsuhi. It has been quite some time since you married into the Ushiromiya family.
Yes. It has been many years since I was first permitted to bear the name Ushiromiya.
Do you sometimes long for your previous family?
No. Marriage means abandoning your birth family. I am Ushiromiya Natsuhi. The Ushiromiya family is the only family I can come home to, the only one I am fond of. She truly wasn't exaggerating. Such was the resolve she felt whenever she applied the Ushiromiya name to herself. And that's precisely why she was so saddened when her husband didn't treat her like an Ushiromiya, leaving her to race about in vain.
If Kraus were a woman, and you his husband. No, I won't say that.
What do you mean by that? Father? Natsuhi was shocked. If Kinzo's words just now were what they seemed, it would have been more than enough to make up for all she'd suffered up to that point.
Forget it. It's just the nonsense of an old man.
Kinzo once again faced away from her. He'd told her to forget it, but Natsuhi couldn't help feeling a warmth in her heart. Father.
She's smiling.
Even though I, Natsuhi, am not connected to you by blood, I am still your daughter. I will most assuredly see to it that your honor and glory and everything you have left behind are protected.
You do not have the right to wear the one-winged eagle. However, the one-winged eagle is surely engraved in your heart. That is irrefutable proof that you are my blood relative, one who will inherit the glory of the Ushiromiya family. Some will sneer that there is no eagle on your clothes, but such words are not worth lending an ear to. Only those who hold the eagle in their hearts are my true blood relatives. I now consider it an honor that you were welcomed into the Ushiromiya family.
Without saying anything more, Kinzo remained with his back to Natsuhi. However, Natsuhi couldn't help but feel something warm well up inside her that she hadn't felt since long ago, when she had been just a child. Natsuhi bowed silently to his back and left the room.
Good timing. How is father? You were taking so long, so I came to check.
When Natsuhi left the study, she saw Eva climbing the stairs and their eyes met. Eva was smirking unpleasantly, thinking that Natsuhi would leave drudgingly after failing to convince Kinzo. However, the way Natsuhi was now, such a frivolous laugh would not disturb her. She was not permitted to wear the family crest on her clothing, but she was permitted to wear it in her heart. So she spoke calmly, clearly, and confidently, with the dignity of the one who would protect the Ushiromiya family's glory. Father said he would not join in on the family conference. He says he has no interest in discussing such obscene matters.
I figured you'd say something like that. If you failed to persuade father, just say so.
How pitiful.
Dang.
I'm beginning to see why father lamented so.
What do you mean by that?
Natsuhi did not answer. Just as Kinzo had done earlier, she showed Eva her back as she headed down the stairs. Eva finally realized that she was being made fun of, that something had happened to quickly bolster Natsuhi's confidence. Even so, she apparently didn't have the courage to risk Kinzo's wrath. Unable to even knock on the door, she could only click her tongue, make a motion as though scratching at it, and follow after Natsuhi.
So, were Nissan and the rest there? Did you ask father about them?
I didn't get the chance to ask, but they were not inside the study. Father would never let them into his room to discuss such a lowly topic, so it is unlikely he knows where they went. Let us go downstairs and wait for the servants to return from their search. Breakfast may be late, but how would you like some tea, Eva-san?
She's smiling, speaking to Eva. That would be fine.
Eva couldn't hide her confusion at the complete difference in Natsuhi's attitude. She was acting so boldly, and while Eva hated to admit it, she even had a sense of dignity about her. Unable to find fault with anything, Eva could only follow Natsuhi back to the parlor. She just needed someone to acknowledge her. That's all she needed.
Just one person. And it was Kinzo. See, he's not all bad.
You're doing all right, girly. You're doing okay. Immediate 180.
Yeah. It makes me think of the It's Always Sunny episode where the gang goes to see a therapist and Dee kept saying, "Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm right. Just tell me I'm right. Just tell me I'm right." Just.
When the two of them returned to the parlor, Hideyoshi had been joined by the 4 children and Nanjo. Genji, who had been talking with Hideyoshi, reported the current situation when he noticed that Natsuhi had returned. "You still have not found my husband and the rest." "Yes, my apologies. Also, Kumasawa has started preparing breakfast. She said that she will need just a little longer."
What's that dish she always says she was always making? Salmon or something?
Mackerel.
Mackerel, that's right. Mackerel for breakfast. Yummy, yummy.
The crock. The
Whoa.
clock. I'm thinking food. I'm thinking crock pot. The clock read
The
a
air
little
fryer.
past 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock should have been the time to start breakfast. Normally, going over that time limit would be a disgrace to the host.
I must be the most disgraceful person alive then.
They are also pretentious rich people. Keep that in mind.
True. True.
Canon is now searching outside. Also, no one has seen Shannon either. Oh, that's me. I forgot for a moment.
Yep.
Even Shannon's missing. Truly, just how many people did my husband bring with him on his little walk? Just how many people had gone missing by now? Now that the number was this large, it was starting to feel truly unpleasant, as though the people here were the only ones being left out of something interesting. At least, that seemed to reflect the feelings of the children, and Maria in particular. She was indignant, her stomach grumbling, almost as though her mother and the others had left her alone to go off and eat something delicious without her. The other children were flipping through the channels on the television, trying to find a program that might interest Maria and cheer her up again. Nanjo was sitting on the sofa, gazing blissfully at the children while reading a book.
I like Nanjo.
It must have been a book about chess. 'Cause he plays chess.
He
So it
does.
has
He
to
does
be a
play
chess
chess.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I read. I only read gaming books.
Yeah, exactly. The sound of footsteps came rushing towards them with a pitter-patter. There was only one set, so they realized before seeing who it belonged to, that it was probably Canon, not Kraus and the rest.
Madam, excuse me.
Judging by your appearance, you still haven't been able to find them?
My apologies. I still haven't.
That will be enough. You've worked hard. She didn't know where they were, but they had to be somewhere on this island. They hadn't a thing to eat since the previous night, so their stomachs must be growling about now. They'd probably come plodding back of their own accord before long. By now, Natsuhi was thoroughly exasperated and started to feel that there was no reason for them to go out of their way and search. I will go to the kitchen and prepare some tea for all of the guests. Thanks to both of you for all your hard work so early in the morning. Natsuhi left the parlor, acting as though the release in tension had caused a new surge in her headache. Canon tried to call her back, but Natsuhi left swiftly. What is it? Was there something else?
Yes. I was unable to find her husband or anyone else, but... well...
Canon sounded evasive. It looked as though he didn't know where they were, but had spotted something that might be connected to their disappearance. Eva and Hideyoshi noticed this exchange of words and came over. They probably picked up on something strange in Kanon's behavior.
What's going on, Kanon-kun? Did you find Kraus-Nissan and everyone else?
Actually, the Rose Garden storehouse looked strange. Fushigi.
What do you mean? It looked strange.
It was, how should I explain it?
Kanon hesitated once more. His tone wasn't at all what you'd expect from this usually fearless boy, excuse me. Seeing this, Eva and Hideyoshi looked at each other dubiously.
What do you mean? Are you saying Nissan and the others were inside the storehouse? No. I'm going to inspect the inside now. I just now came back to get the key, but...
I don't really get it, but it sounds like we've just got to look around inside it. Where's the key to that storehouse?
It is in the servant room. Let us check inside the storehouse at once. My Kanon be smoldering, I don't care.
Kanon dashed off to the servant room and returned with the key.
And he dashing again.
Genji left the parlor, saying that he would go check, but then Eva and Hideyoshi followed after him. What was this something strange about the storehouse that had caused the usually fearless Kanon to hesitate? It was still pouring outside, but perhaps their curiosity over this something that Kanon couldn't talk about won out. While the children made a big fuss watching television, Kanon and the rest dashed over to the entrance. The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that had housed various tools used to manage the garden.
Dang, insightful, hot, peak writing right there.
It was definitely not a pretty building, episode 1 moment.
Yeah.
Because of its appearance, it had been built so that it was hidden in the corner of the Rose Garden. Kanon, Genji, Eva, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was normally off limits for those appreciating the garden and was only used by those maintaining it. As they dashed down that, the storehouse came into view in front of them.
Are you guys ready, audience? You ain't ready for this.
Are you guys going trick-or-treating?
I don't think they will be after this one.
It was quite an old shed, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the Rose Garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in a hard-to-see place. It's just a square with a garage door on it.
It doesn't look fancy and rich.
Eva and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Kanon and Genji.
You two sure are fast. I thought my heart was gonna explode.
It just might yet, bud. I never knew they had a storehouse way over here. But... What is that?
When Eva looked where Kanon was pointing, she was at a loss for words. I like to imagine he's pointing like Lethal Company.
I just did it in real life.
Noticing this, Hideyoshi also followed Kanon's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was a kind of shutter. That was so odd. No. And there, everyone suddenly realized why Kanon had been unable to find words to describe what they would now saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from being exposed to wind and rain for so long,
Filthy.
stuck right on it, there was something that looked like a strange dark red liquid. mucus? Or maybe it was some sticky paint. An indescribably eerie shape was drawn on the shutter, with some kind of ghastly substance. The rain had caused it to drip down like fresh blood leaking from an open wound. No more beating around the bush. Some kind of mark was drawn there, with a ghastly substance that looked like blood, in the shape that seemed to be suggesting something ominous. 2 circles were drawn there, and inside them was a design that looked like a cross. The 4 ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between the shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters or possibly symbols.
What a vulgar bit of graffiti. Could this be one of those magic circles used in demonic ceremonies?
We got pentagram. We got summoning circle.
There's a pentagram on the shed out back.
Yeah.
It wasn't
We've got the
surprising
photo
that Hideyoshi would say that about such a ghastly shape, drawn with a deep red dripping substance.
It's tomato juice. I don't know. When was this made?
Ketchup.
Last night. I came here before it started raining, and there was nothing drawn here at that time.
We must do something before anyone else sees this. If they laid eyes upon it, it would cause them great discomfort.
That's right. Even though it's just a shed, I wouldn't want to leave such an unpleasant piece of graffiti alone for even a second longer than I had to.
There is some paint inside the storehouse. Let us paint over it temporarily as an emergency measure, then repaint it again someday when the weather is good. Ellipses.
Yeah. He would.
He would say ellipses, he would. Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another scribble, and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance of the same color as this. That must have been... That's right. He had seen it on the door to Natsuhi's room.
Canon-kun, let's remove this scribble quickly and go back, okay? Even though it's just a storehouse, it's really irritating to have graffiti around the home I was brought up in. Yes, ma'am. I will take care of it immediately.
Canon squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. He then lifted it up with all of his strength.
He gently opened the door.
Cut away? Oh, not yet. A boisterous noise resounded, and the eerie shape drawn on the shutter began to get sucked in through the top as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, that ominous drawing disappeared from their direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief.
Cut away.
Thanks to a kids program they came across, Maria was feeling much better. Badler and Jessica were poking fun at the kids' show at every turn, cackling together. George was enjoying the program with Maria from her perspective. Nanjo sat on a sofa by himself, passing the time and reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were the footsteps of a single person. Did that mean it wasn't the group of 4 that had just left? It was Genji. It was very rare for Genji, who considered being out of breath a violation of the servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He had probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet, and he didn't have his usual trim appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small silent bow and quickly approached him.
Dr. Nanjo, my apologies. Please come with me quickly. What is the matter?
As Genji whispered something into Nanjo's ear, Nanjo went pale. He rose from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children who were still engrossed in the TV, and the 2 of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were about to exit the parlor, they came across Natsuhi, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Genji whispered something into Natsuhi's ear, and Natsuhi went pale too in apparent shock. Then, leaving the serving cart where it was, the three of them dashed towards the entrance. George noticed them running down the rose garden through the window.
What's that? Isn't that Genji-san and Dr. Nanjo and that's Aunt Natsuhi, isn't it?
What's up, Aniki?
Maybe something happened. They looked terribly flustered.
When Jessica and Maria saw that Eva, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo were no longer in their seats and the serving cart had been abandoned in the entrance to the parlor, they also realized that something was the matter. Could there have been some kind of accident? Let's go check it out. It's no fun if we're the only ones left out, right? For some reason, what Badler said sounded extremely indiscreet.
Yeah.
But they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned after seeing the adults run off into the rain without regards to their appearance. Let's check it out, okay? I'm worried something might have happened. Jessica's uneasy words spoke for all of them. Hey, Maria, are you coming too? Or will you watch TV? Ooh, wanna watch TV? Ooh.
Let's go on without her. Maria-chan, we'll be back soon. You keep watching TV, okay?
Ooh.
Flash.
By the time the kids made it outside, the adults were no longer in sight. But Jessica seemed to have a pretty good idea where they'd gone, judging by the direction they'd been running. Following Jessica, we ran through the rain-soaked rose garden. The wind seemed to suddenly get stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to ring out, like it had the previous night. It felt like an eerie something had surrounded the island, and was trying to stop us from moving forward. Jessica, is there something over this way? I'm pretty sure there's a storehouse for gardening tools or something.
What in the world could be going on in a place like that?
Just as Jessica had said, they began to see a storehouse in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter to the storehouse was open, and several adults looked as though they were searching for something. For some reason, only Natsuhi was outside the storehouse. Without even holding an umbrella, she looked like she was hanging her head and her back was facing them. There was Genji, Nanjo, and Natsuhi, who had just left the mansion. The ones who'd left earlier, Kanon, Eva, and Hideyoshi, were also there, making for a small crowd of people. But there was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized the children were approaching, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them with her arms spread wide. You mustn't come any closer! Go back to the mansion! But despite that, no, because of that, the kids saw the scene Natsuhi was trying to keep them away from. Inside of the storehouse, with its shutter wide open, a faint fluorescent light shone down. And right there was...
Good luck. No, can't laugh right now.
Jessica's piercing shriek rang out. But that was just because Jessica's scream was the loudest. The same thing spilled out of Badler and George's mouths as well. I'm picturing them screaming like that.
True. Oh, what song is this one?
Eva spread her arms just like Natsuhi, roaring at the kids with a bone-chilling expression on her face.
Oh, I know this song. I think I do. You know what the name of this song is?
What is the name of this song?
Golden Slaughterer.
Oh, here we go. Everything's kicking off now.
George, take everyone and return to the mansion. Quickly. Right now!
When Nazi spread her arms, I thought she was trying to prevent us from advancing any further. But that wasn't why Eva was spreading her arms right now. She was trying to stop us kids from seeing that terrible scene. It was her mother's heart, trying to protect the eyes and hearts of us children by blocking our view of that terrible scene by at least the width of one of her arms. Is this some kind of joke? Is it? I'd seen this kind of cheap scene all too often. In manga, TV, anime, and movies. I'd seen it over and over again. This was just seeing something appear in real life that I'd seen plenty of times before in some of those more sensational movies, right? That alone shouldn't... But that suit... It's that old bastard's, isn't it? I get it. Then that's Uncle Kraus. And Kyrie-san and Aunt Rosa. Dad! Dad! You mustn't, Jessica! You mustn't go in! You mustn't look! Dad! Dad!
Autism be darned, this OST can cook.
Rigor mortis has set in across almost the entire body. Most likely, 6 hours or more have passed since death. As far as I can tell by looking at the damaged area, there is a high probability that they were damaged after their deaths. No, I must watch what I say. I am a general practitioner. Examining corpses is outside my area of expertise.
It's worth mentioning, the last time we saw the clock, like where everybody was doing their like scenes, was at midnight, and this started at 6 a.m.
So, what does that mean? Just killing them wasn't enough, so they went and did something like this? The devil. This here's the work of the devil.
You would say that.
And Natsuhi caught Jessica in her arms, and Eva caught George Aniki. So I was the only one who could approach the entrance to the storehouse.
Yellow.
If only there had been someone there to catch me, too. I wouldn't have needed to have this horrible, evil scene burned into my eyes. No, that's not it. It isn't that there's no one here to catch me. The people who should catch me, they're right there, aren't they? Just as Jessica said, it did look like a storehouse for gardening tools. A lawnmower with extra blades, a grass sickle and a hammer, some carpentry tools such as a saw, piled up potted plants and bags of fertilizer, and treated just the same, the corpses of several people had been laid to rest there. No, had been tossed in there. I could tell them by their clothes. That old bastard and Kyrie-san, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Rosa. Beyond that, Gora-san and...
Woohoo! Sorry.
Are there still more of them? How many people died?
One's
You're
still
fucking
unaccounted.
kidding me! I can't even count them on one hand, damn it! I didn't know whether it had been one of these gardening tools, which, if used for something other than their intended purpose, could definitely be wielded with a naked brutality, or whether some horrible tool had been brought in here specifically for this. Anyway, each one of the bodies jammed in here had been given an atrocious makeup. It wasn't makeup. It was more like their faces had been plowed. Their faces were smashed, forced into expressions that normal people couldn't even make after death. I couldn't tell where eyes or noses were, but I could find their mouths because they were gaping wide, their gums exposed.
Holy moly.
But their front teeth were missing, and even the cheeks that should have covered all this were all torn up and laid bare. That trendy makeup you always spent so much time on even though you're a man isn't doing a thing now.
That is a really funny dig in the middle of this deep scene. Yeah.
Dad! I always thought you were going to hell. But still, not like this, right? You weren't such a son of a bitch that you should have to suffer so brutally. And Kyrie-san, didn't I tell you to stop going out with this guy? There's absolutely no reason for you to end up like this too. They've got no faces. No faces. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it! Ah!
Battler-san, you mustn't look anymore. There's no way your mother and father would want you to see them like this. For your mother and father's sakes, you mustn't look anymore.
Dead people are supposed to have faces that look like they're sleeping peacefully, right? They've got no faces. My dad and Kyrie-san have no faces. I don't even know what kind of faces they were wearing when they died. What's wrong with me? Will I have to see these smashed monster-like faces every time I remember them? That's just great. I didn't want to remember that old bastard's smug face anyway. Just great. Just great.
What is he punching or kicking?
I'm assuming the ground.
Probably.
But why even Kyrie-san's face? Kyrie-san wasn't a crook. Sure, she ticked me off a bit now and then, but she was like a cool big sister to me. This is wrong. This is all wrong. At least Uncle Kraus has it better, doesn't he? It's not his whole face, just the side. At least he's got half his face left, right? That's still better. That's still better.
Oh.
No! I doubt my mic got most
Not a
of that.
single thing. Nope.
Yeah. Okay, it was very high pitched. It was very. I was proud of myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Jessica filled her ears with the sound of her own screaming, trying to shut out my reckless words.
Yeah, fair. Stop it, Battler-kun! Just stop it! Just stop it!
Aniki! Aniki! Disregarding age and appearance, I fell to my knees, clinging to Aniki's waist and sobbing. It was as if I was crying on behalf of everyone there. Representing the feelings of everyone there, I screamed over and over.
Golden Slaughterer, baby.
Is that the end of the
We gotta.
scene?
I don't. Oh, not really. Okay.
Okay.
Father. The ones lying over there are Uncle Kraus, Uncle Rudolf, and Kyrie, and Aunt Rosa, and Goda-san. Just those 5, right?
No. There are 6 people. There's one more person over here.
God, I'm gonna lose my voice again, aren't I?
The body Hideyoshi was looking down on now happened to be hidden among the shadows in that mountain range of objects, in a blind spot to George, who stood by the entrance. So George couldn't tell whose body it was. So George cursed himself. He cursed the fact that his worst guesses always turned out to be right.
So, the one lying at your feet is Shannon, isn't it?
Yes. It's Shannon-chan.
Ooh, did you hear that? Hey, we gotta check the tip menu.
Oh, yeah.
We gotta check the tips. Or that, yeah.
All right.
Take a peek. Pop!
Ushiromio Kraus. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. The direct cause of death is unknown, but it seems the side of his head was smashed after his death. This is the beginning of everything.
Ooh.
Ushiromio Rudolf. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after death. He has a right to lament his ill fortune. Ushiromia Kyrie. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. She was chosen by the demon's roulette. That's all there is to it. Ushiromia Rosa. Yada yada yada. I'll get to see her again, so I don't feel lonely.
We're gonna have to unpack this when it's all through here.
Servant Shannon. Yada yada yada. Don't worry. Everyone will be revived in the Golden Land. And Servant Goda. How unfortunate. He was originally supposed to be on duty in the guest house.
Okay. First off, this song we're listening to is called World End.
Ah.
In parentheses, baby piano.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sorry, I really have to pee. That's why I was asking if the scene was over, so I'm gonna do that, like, for 1 second. I'll be back.
Alright. I will unpack with the audience here. Wow! Let's take a little breather. Oh my gosh. So if you were familiar with the Umineko series, like I am, you were probably eagerly awaiting this moment, because this is when stuff gets real. This is the moment. This is the time. And, like, we're in it. It hits hard. Say what you will about, like, the redundant writing and some of the dated writing earlier with, like, Battler and stuff. And even some of the parts that weren't working, that just weren't narratively very satisfying. But now, holy moly, can Ryukushio 7 and 7th expansion as a whole, can they make a scene? Because this scene, the dialogue and the descriptive, the narration, hits like a truck. And we're not even through with it yet. We're getting ready to go to the George and Shannon bit here, obviously. And just, wow. Wow, wow, wow. And it's so, I'm struggling, because I've gone through this story before. I already know what's going to happen. But the emotional weight here is hitting like a truck, but I am absorbed in the mystery part, so that's why I wanted to take a look at this tips menu and everything. So we're gonna sort of detract a bit from this emotional moment.
I return.
But we'll get back into it. Welcome back.
I did.
I was talking
was
with
thinking.
the audience.
I was thinking while I was in the restroom, perhaps Discord might have cut me out on those, but OBS might have picked them up, so they might have still gotten that in the stream.
Maybe.
I'll have to watch back and see.
Yep.
I was proud of them. I thought they were realistic sounding girl screams, but
you may not have the one-winged woman on your clothes, but you have it in your heart.
Are you telling me there's a woman inside me? Wait.
So let's unpack this. First off, did you read through these when you were playing before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
I did.
What is your take on these right here?
Well, based off of Rosa's, immediately, I believe that they are narrated by Maria.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why they're narrated by Maria, but earlier, when everyone woke up, the whole thing was Maria felt lonely because her mom wasn't around, right?
True.
So at the bottom of this one, it says, I'll get to see her again so I don't feel lonely.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, that's probably Maria. But why? Why is Maria narrating these? And also Maria's obsessed with the witches, and she's saying this thing about, don't worry, everyone will be revived in the Golden Land. The other ones, perhaps she doesn't narrate all of them, because some of these are like, ugh.
This is the beginning of everything.
Yeah, he has a right to lament his ill fortune. How unfortunate.
I don't think she did all of them, but I do definitely see the parallels there with that one there. And I'm not 100% sure where all these go. Yeah, I don't know what the tie-in for all of these are. Huh.
I'm assuming Krause's being this is the beginning of everything means he was probably killed first. He was probably the very first. It's also Krause's fault that Goda died, because he switched the servants.
Yeah. But you know what? Couldn't be happier about that part. See this guy later. I don't think anyone else's stuff has changed.
I don't believe so.
Couldn't hurt to check, but... F. Alright, well, we got our first set here. Let's, get back into this emotional scene here.
Yeah. Cry.
I am.
George fell completely silent. He shook slightly, his lower lip trembling. Normally, he would have wanted to run to his beloved's body, screaming and crying. However, before rashly running forward, he worked to keep his composure and asked his father.
Is Shannon the same as Uncle Krause and the others?
Hideyoshi deeply understood the meaning of those words. He couldn't give George an immediate answer. Or rather, he felt that silence was the only sincere and loving response he could give George right now. When George asked if Shannon was the same, he meant to ask whether the corpse in front, or whether her corpse was in the same condition as the others or not. Since Hideyoshi hadn't denied it, it meant her corpse was in the same brutal state.
Can I look at Shannon?
No, you can't.
Why not? After all, I won't be able to see Shannon's face again, right? So why won't you let me see what her face looked like at the end?
The last time you met Shannon-chan was yesterday, right?
Yes.
I see. When you left her, what kind of face was she showing you?
Thanks, game.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
He's sad. He's holding composure. It was a wonderful smile.
After he handed her the ring, she hesitated, even though she must have already made up her mind. Then she looked bashful and ran away because she was embarrassed to let him see her face looking like that. That's the expression that was revived in George's mind.
I see. Then I'm sure Shannon-chan would want to leave you with that smile in your memory.
Hideyoshi looked down upon Shannon's body lying at his feet. Just like the other bodies, it was in such a horrible state that it'd make anyone want to cover their eyes. Her head had been smashed in from the side, and no more than half of her expression remained. If the remaining blood-soaked half of her expression had been wiped clean, would that graceful smile of hers have peeked out? But only half of it? Without thinking, Hideyoshi slapped his hands over his eyes. How brutal. If her face was going to be crushed anyway, then if only all of it had been crushed. He might have been able to temporarily distract George from his pain by making the pathetic suggestion that it was someone else wearing Shannon's clothes. But half of her face had been left untouched. It caused the body so much humiliation, while still proving beyond a doubt that the body was Shannon's and no one else's. How inhuman. How brutish. And there, trying his best to burn the image of the remaining half of Shannon's expression into his eyes as she lay at Hideyoshi's feet, was Kanon. Kanon was not crying. Tears had risen to his eyes, but they did not drip down. But that didn't mean he wasn't feeling as much sadness as everyone else. Losing Shannon, who had lived with him at the same orphanage, whom he had loved as a sister, must have been just the same as losing a blood relative.
George, I'm sure Shannon-chan is saying thank you. She must be glad you didn't end up seeing her in such a pitiful state. I'm sure she's thanking you for holding strong and showing restraint.
I understand. I understand, Father. I understand.
George leaned against the outside wall of the storehouse, crouching down limply.
Father, I have a request.
What is it?
I want you to look for me. Is there a ring on Shannon's finger?
A ring? Let me see.
Hideyoshi crouched down. As he did, Kanon silently pointed to one of Shannon's hands.
Yeah, there is. It's a diamond ring. With a valuable diamond. Must have been pretty expensive.
And which hand? And which finger is it on?
The ring finger of her left hand. I see. So Shannon-chan was engaged?
George, don't tell me you...
Eva! That doesn't matter now. A man made a lifelong promise to Shannon-chan. A man promised her happiness for life. Who that man was isn't the issue here. Being told that by a man is a woman's dream, isn't it? I don't know when she received this ring. I also don't know who gave it to her. However, even so, Shannon-chan took this ring. Then, she accepted it and put it on her left ring finger. I'm sure the man who gave it to her was also happy.
To most of the people there, Hideyoshi was simply disturbed by this extraordinary situation and was blurting out nonsense. However, someone who knew of George and Shannon's true relationship would understand the full meaning of those words.
I see. Thank you, Father.
George stood up. The traces of tears still streaked his face, but his expression had returned to its usual calm one.
Let's go. Battler-kun, Jessica-chan. If we stay here any longer, we'll get in the way of the adults.
You're right. Jessica sniffled once, showing her face to her mother, who had been holding her the whole time to let her know she was okay now. When she faced George again, she once again had on her usual expression, although she still couldn't smile. Battler, hang in there. Battler kept on crouching in front of his parents' bodies. I'm sorry. Crying like hell calmed me down. You bastard, Dad. I bet you're laughing at me. After all that shit I talked about you, here I am crying like a baby just 'cause you died. Well, so what? I guess I just got the gene that makes you cry when your parents kick the bucket.
Dang.
Battler's face was still bright red from the tears, but he had at least recovered enough to fake a smile, if only a bitter one.
That's one of the goatiest battler like sprites.
Canon, you mustn't remain here any longer either. Take the children and return to the mansion. Natsuhi had been standing under the rain this whole time, unable to take a step into the storehouse. Maybe she had her own way of grieving, different from battlers. Realizing that she had to take on a role of responsibility now that her husband was dead, she gave Canon those orders.
Yes, madam.
Canon rose silently and turned to face me. His face was pure white, almost as though his own heart had died along with Shannon, and there was no life in his expression. On an ordinary day, if he had been told to guide the children through the beautiful rose garden, Canon might have led the way. But now, there was no distinction between Canon and the children. They were now just kids of about the same age, suffering the pain of losing those close to them. After making sure that the children were leaving, Natsuhi started giving orders to Genji. Genji, contact the police immediately. They probably won't be able to come until the typhoon passes, but they should be able to tell us what to do next.
Understood. There is an emergency radio, so I will use that to contact them.
When she heard that, Natsuhi remembered. That's right. The phones were out today, weren't they? However, they also had a radio, since they couldn't necessarily rely on phones all the time while living on an isolated island. At any rate, they should start by contacting the police and receiving their instructions. Everything else could wait. Dr. Nanjo, is there anything more you can do here?
Unfortunately, there is nothing I can do.
Understood. Genji, could you at least cover their faces with something? Exposing them like this is humiliating to them as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Genji picked up several dried towels from inside the storehouse, when Eva stopped him with a shrill voice.
Uh-oh. Oh, wait a second! Stop! This is the scene of the crime, isn't it? Then we mustn't disturb it. We all panicked and walked in here with our shoes on, but even that will surely get in the way of the police's investigation, right?
Natsuhi glared at Eva, offended. Objectively speaking, Eva was right. Even so, she glared at Eva as though accusing her of refusing to do those tragic corpses which had been humiliated even after death the simple kindness of covering their faces. However, Eva had spoken both calmly and correctly. This horrible situation definitely wasn't an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed them. It was a murder case. So they needed to be careful to avoid disturbing the site any further. They had to do what little they could to aid the police, preserving clues that might help catch the detestable culprit.
I agree with Eva-san. Until the police come, we should leave everything be. What do you say, madam?
You're right. Very well. Close it up. And just in case, we should put a different lock on it.
A different lock?
Yes. When we came here, the shutter was locked. That means the culprit used the key to the shutter to lock it.
That makes sense.
Ooh.
So does that mean that the key opens that opens this shutter will have the culprit's fingerprints on it?
Sorry, I was figuring out the song. We're on stupefaction. I'm sure it'll be worth submitting it to the police as evidence. But Canon-kun usually has it, and he used it to unlock the shed just now. It'll probably have Kanon's fingerprints on it. Also, that key was handed to Genji-san just now, and he took it with his bare hands. It doesn't look like it'll be very useful as evidence.
That was careless of me. My apologies.
Genji-san, are there any other keys to this storehouse?
No. Only this one.
So the culprit walked out of the servant room with that key, and then was nice enough to return the key to where they found it?
Ooh, ooh, it's the first one. It's the first one of these. Look at that.
6.
Key to 6 people to question mark?
Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go through all the trouble of returning a key that they stole? No, if you think about it even more deeply, there are some points that are even more bizarre. When a criminal hides a body, they're usually trying to delay the point at which it'll be found so that they can use that time to escape. The 6 weren't necessarily killed here, but it was reasonable to assume that they were killed somewhere on this island, carried to the storehouse, and hidden to delay the discovery of the crime. And yet, the eerie magic circle scribbled on the storehouse shutter had eloquently indicated the location of the hidden corpses. Sure, it didn't explicitly mention the corpses, but 6 people had gone missing. In that situation, someone had made such an obvious piece of graffiti and even returned the key to the shutter, almost as though they wanted the corpses here to be discovered.
Alright. We'll let them cook. Well, I guess that's probably them finishing cooking. So, Devil's Advocate mode. Thoughts? How TF?
Well, I would simply say, if I'm devil's advocating here, that for some reason the murderer wanted the corpses to be found. They had to be someone who would have had access to the servant room to get the key, so that immediately implicates all of the servants, obviously minus Shannon and Goda, because they're both dead. But for some reason, they wanted the corpses to be noticed and found, so they put that sigil on the door to mark it out and make it obvious.
Yeah.
Reason being unknown, obviously.
And let's see what other information we can pull from here. Other than the servants, the head family would... No, actually, just Natsuhi and Kraus would have been in the mansion, not the guest house. They would have had access to the servant room and key.
Well, all of the adults were in the main house because they were arguing until midnight.
Also true.
And they had guest rooms prepared for all of the adults.
Yeah. So pretty much that makes the cousins and the people that were stationed in the guest house, the servants,
Least
pretty
likely.
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one of the people stationed in the guest house was Genji. The other one was... Oh no, it was Genji and Kanon and Shannon. Those were the 3 that were in the guest house. And then the 2 in the main house were Goda and Kumasawa.
Yeah.
So right now, Kumasawa is the biggest implication on her back right now.
Additional information is the fact that there was the weird bloody scratch marks at Natsuhi's door that matched the same material as what was on the shutter.
Which implies that someone also wanted to kill Natsuhi, which brings her suspicion level down by a bit.
Or it was someone that wanted to make it look like Natsuhi was a target.
True.
I don't know. But
anyway,
yeah.
We can't put all our faith in a lock that the culprit has opened once before. If we want to protect this place from the culprit's hand, I think we should put a new lock on it.
I think that is a good plan. I agree.
Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock that had been inside a small box.
Keep those things on tap.
What should I do with the key? I will take it. I will take responsibility and hand it over to the police. Natsuhi took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter. and so the corpses were once again sealed behind that shutter, which was covered with that creepy magic circle. Genji crouched down in front of the shutter to fasten the new padlock. Shutters often have a place in front where you can attach your own lock, in addition to the main lock of the shutter. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roar of thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there, ominously. With its closed shutters still covered in a blood-like, creepy substance, it swallowed up the bodies of the 6. To Natsuhi, putting the new lock on wasn't mainly to preserve the scene for the police. She might have felt like she wanted to shut that mouth for all eternity, to prevent that eerie beast from swallowing up any more victims. Come on, let's go, everyone. Dr. Nanjo, thank you very much for your work. Genji, hurry and contact the police.
I will do so as soon as I return.
The adults left the storehouse.
Ooh.
The ghastly magic circle drawn on the shutter kept the 6 bodies in its throat, looming eerily as the lightning occasionally lit it up.
Man, now I'm gonna struggle to decide what I want to do for my thumbnail for the next stream. Do I want to do the diagram of the 6 people in the thing? Do I want to do the magic
Sigil.
circle? Do I just want to do the storehouse?
Yeah, the storehouse, the still that we got of Hideyoshi and George over Shannon.
Yeah. I do gotta say the storehouse is like the or gently opened the door from
Yeah.
DDLC.
Yeah.
Anyone that's an Umineko fan sees that storehouse and they're like, gulp. Yeah, it's the, or I guess for most people it's like, let me get my popcorn first kind of moment. More like,
Now I have a question
What?
for you.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep going? Because we've been going for almost 2 hours.
I don't know. This does seem like a very good stopping point. I
This
feel
seems like a good checkpoint.
It
Everything's
does, it
kicked
does.
off now.
Yeah.
We're actually in the meat now. The murder mystery has begun.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll we got a little bit of time. Well, at least I have some time. I don't know if you got any time or not.
I've got time.
But
I would just like to eat
Let me
dinner
see here.
eventually, but
yeah, I think we should wrap up because we won't be streaming next week.
True.
Are we back on track 2 weeks from now? 2 Thursdays?
should be. I believe so. Let me
Okay.
look.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I
just
have
a
no
week break.
complication. Yeah. Week break because holidays.
Week break because holidays, so next week there'll be no streams. But there will be videos.
True.
But in any case, I know we kind of did just break it down, but let's see where you are right now. Who do you think, again, if we're like you and I are like, well, it was simply the witch.
Yeah. But
if
if we're
someone
not
has not
doing
watched
that,
the previous streams,
if we're
yeah,
devil's advocating right now and we're saying the witch can't exist,
yeah,
and
if
magic
we're
isn't
battler
real.
pilled.
then I think the most likely suspects would have to be Kumasawa-san, Eva, and Hideyoshi.
I don't want to hear who like your highest suspects. I want you to tell me who did it and how.
Who did it and how?
Yeah.
Huh.
I unfortunately can't participate much because I unfortunately know everything. But
That's a tall ask.
I know.
Out of the 3 of them, it would be most likely that Kumasawa-san is an old lady, so she would have trouble physically harming anyone without resistance. Eva is known to practice martial arts, so that gives her an up. Hideyoshi isn't known to practice martial arts, but he is an adult man, so that gives him some capability. So that now has brought me to Eva and Hideyoshi. They both left early, so they're left early in quotes. So
Yeah, true.
perhaps, hear me out, crackpot theory right now.
All right. Yep.
They did it together.
Oh, you think they were co-conspirators?
Co-conspirator couple so desperate to save their financial situation for their family right now that they killed all the other siblings in order to fabricate a situation in where Eva is the only blood relative left, which means she will now get the only blood relative directly under Kinzo because there's also still the grandchildren. But now that makes it easier for her to get a lion's share of the inheritance so that they can save Hideyoshi's company and get that situation done with.
Okay.
It would be relatively easy for both of them, I think, because they were in the argument, so they could have killed everyone in there with a simple method. Perhaps something that wouldn't have drawn blood because they were in the what do you call it, dining room. So, that's where martial arts could come into play there, bludgeoning instruments could come into play there, and then
Dr. Nanjo did say that it seemed like they died and then the stuff happened to them.
Yes, exactly. And then they took them out to the storehouse, and then they did all that stuff to their faces, brutalized them, for perhaps the reason of, I don't know, maybe they were trying to do like, well, we're such close family, we would never do such a horrendous, awful act. If we would even think about doing such a thing, we would have done it cleanly and don't even implicate us in doing, like, killing our family. Perhaps to, like,
worth mentioning
throw that out.
This aligns with the first Twilight.
Yes, it does align with the first Twilight, which also could be a way to throw people off and be like, clearly someone is trying to go for the witch's gold, but we all thought it was a stupid legend, right?
All for the six,
so perhaps
by the key.
Perhaps it's like reverse psychology. They're trying to make it noticeable and apparent so that it makes it seem like it couldn't be them, right? Which also goes for the sigil, because obviously something to do with magic. Maria has been talking about magic circles, that kind of stuff, and they were outwardly like, oh, how funny, haha, magic isn't real. So perhaps it's a bunch of attempts at reverse psychology. Not really a good idea when you're actually trying to do a murder, because it will very easily backfire on you to implicate yourself, even if you think it might help somehow. But that's most likely what I could see the reasoning for those things being in this hypothetical I'm creating, where they are the culprits.
Yeah.
And then obviously the servant room key thing makes it implicate the servants more than them.
Very true. If I recall correctly, it's been a while since I've read the whole dang thing. I mostly remember the key events. Key events. But as I recall, there's a whole moment later where they're talking about the possibility of them getting the key, of whoever could get the key.
Yeah, and the servants are like top on that list.
Yep. But in truth, anyone that was like in the room, if I recall, can get the key. Anyone that was in the mansion can just go get it.
Yeah, it's not a thing of like only the servants can get into that room. I think it's more so like only the servants really like know where all the keys are at one given time. So it's really, you just had to know the key was there, and all of the servants already knew that information, but very easily it could have been found out by anyone else.
True. All right. Well, I will say, without saying much, I think you're at a good line of logic by beginning to think of things as fetched as co-conspirators.
Okay.
Because as with almost any good murder mystery, not everyone's telling the truth. In fact, most people aren't.
All right.
Okay, well, that is Umineko Stream 6, Episode 1, Legend of the Golden Witch.
Oh.
We'll be back next year.
Yeah, and now we're about halfway through Episode 1, I'd say.
Yeah, more or less. I can't remember how much dialogue or writing, reading, whatever there is about what follows, but as I recall, it starts going fast now we're at this point.
It does pick up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please leave your comments as well. What do you think happened? Who do you think has done this? Without spoilers, though. If you post the real thing and you're like, I've looked it up, I know this is true, this is what happens, and you're right, I will, like, shadow ban you permanently. No talking. We will never see your comments ever
Monsieur Nouvelette!
again. Exactly. But if you aren't, cheat and laming, tell us your guesses.
And laming.
Yeah. Tell us in the comments, what do you think has happened here? Who did this? Why? Well, I guess why is pretty self-explanatory for almost every character. How did they do it?
Yep.
We'll see if you're right by the very end in, 2028.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
See ya next year.